I'm walking myself through the story of this action so I can become a part of the story and hopefully get a piece of the move in the scenario that it sets up. So price taps us in. We have 2 active positions. So what I would do now is I'd take my stop loss, I'd move it to break even, which means now I cannot lose money, which is very, very cool. And I traded that strength, and then I managed in that strength that only 1 win counted for about 13 R in gain. At the end of the day, the things that I do every single day, the execution that I take is the same, and it over time results in profitability. All right, hey, how's it going, guys? Merry Christmas and Happy New Year based on whenever this video gets recorded and made. I'm a little bit sick right now, but I thought I'd put this together for all of you because, well, whether I'm sick, whether I'm feeling good, whether I'm feeling bad, it doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, the things that I do every single day, the execution that I take is the same, and it over time results in profitability or in positive edge. So what I did is I combed through a lot of my trades from over this last year. So this is actually the whole year from February up until most recently, which is December. And I've removed a lot of the lower time frame trades to make this very, very fair. And it came out to something that looks a little bit like this, which is phenomenal. And you can see just the end of the year, this is like the last month and a half, last 2 months, has done more for me than any other month before, which happens because I am following rules. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to use to not bore any of you, I'm going to be using this exact cycle right here. So part of the private mentorship is this right here. All I do in the private mentorship is I walk you through the step-by-step as to why and how those cycles work, why they're so important, why they're so vital, and I show you real examples of using these, as I will in today's video. Now, to actually execute upon this cycle, so you can see we use the momentum cycle for higher time frames, specifically this one right here and this one right here. They're all interchangeable. And for the entries, we use a version of this, where what I'm doing personally is I'm looking to enter through these portions here, and once I get positioned, hopefully that position holds itself and never comes back and starts a beautiful, beautiful move. So today I'm going to be again showing you how I use these exact cycles through labeling to trade markets through a back testing kind of environment. And to do that, we're going to start with the mentfx screener. So I'm going to reload this so you know it's just very fair. This is the Omni screener, and it comes pre-inputted for anyone that's part of the team. And personally, I have a few filters set up, which are all taught within the portal. So it's very easy to set it up. And these are the assets that get spit out by this, right? So what we're going to do today is we're just going to kind of choose one of these assets and try to go through it step by step based on the most recent moves that it's made to ask ourselves, how could we have gotten ourselves positioned behind these moves? How could we have made money on these moves? And how can we use the exact same cycles that I teach over and over and over again on this channel, as well as privately, to get positioned and to make money or to take edge out of the market? So what we'll do is, there's like about 10 here, I believe. Yep, 10. So we'll do a random number between 1 and 10. Between 1 and 10, and we're going to press 1 and 10. And we're going to press generate, and we're going to use 9. So 9 is XMTR. Okay, so we'll start with XMTR. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're just going to simply type in XMTR. There it is. And we're going to delete everything. Hopefully we don't see anything. And we're simply going to go back to before any of this run had happened, because that's what would have started to show up in the screener whenever this was. So you can see this is December. We can go back to August. So January, February, March, August, September, October, November, December. So about 4 months, which is around correct. So a lot of these assets you see me add here are all based on stuff from the screener. So you'll see a lot of the names here also showcased in here. They're very close, and they usually are the same, because what I do is I use this to find the markets I'm going to watch, and then I watch those markets for actual opportunities. And at the moment, you know, this is one of those markets that's showing up. So the question is now, how could I use my exact rules to trade this market, and would there be opportunities made for me given my actual rules? So again, all I do ultimately is I want to use the momentum cycle across the V and the C, which are the 2 higher time frames, and I want to use the E cycle, which is this one right here, to get positioned on the E. And all I'm doing to do that is I'm using the EVC rule. So for me today, it'll be the 65-minute, the daily, and C is the weekly. So this is the rules I use for the time frames, and this is all taught in the portal material. It's covered a few times over on this channel already, so you guys can go back and find all this, but today is just about walking you through how I would trade a given asset and get myself positioned behind a potential move. So I usually start on the weekly, and I usually like to start to label like what's going on in the actual market. But right now when I'm looking at this, I don't see anything special about this, right? When I look at this, I see a stage one that kind of occurred here, and this right here kind of started this accumulation, which failed the hold. So here we have a momentum MB that began to get built. This is what I would call a momentum MB of a higher time frame. Just going to label a few of these. This was an accumulation MB, right? So this began a move but never sustained itself, and you can see it broke down. So I'm just labeling myself through step by step what this market kind of did, so I know where I am. Distributed, went through momentum MBs to the downside, and is currently in just full distribution. So what I would be waiting for right now is I'd be waiting for some kind of stage one like this, which starts a move higher. Now, what's really important for me is, like, during this time, I ask myself, what's the main market doing? So if I go to the QQQ at this point, you know, I'll try to hide everything here just to be very fair, or we can use US 100 to be fair about it, and we can unhide everything. There we go. Yeah, so there we go. So during that same time, so this is as the other pair, so this is this pair right here, as this pair right here is coming down, is kind of building a stage one. Most recently, the week has been up. As that's all happening, US 100, which would be the main market, right, has been going on a very, very clear run. So to me, this shows weakness overall, right? So that's a note that I want to make, right? Right now is that this thing has shown overall weakness. So I can make a note about that. This thing overall, over the past few weeks / months, has shown a ton of weakness. So this is literally the kind of operations that I'll go through for determining what I'm going to trade, how I might trade it, right? I want to walk myself through what an asset has been doing. I want to see the story behind that asset, because that's going to determine how I'm going to go about it later. So recently it's had a few weeks up, a week down, a week up, and you can see it's just come up above the 20 EMA, while the US 100, so this is the overall market, has actually shown 3 weeks down. Most recently found itself on some rising average. So again, if we kind of go through the step by step, we have a accumulation MB coming out of here. So I'm just going a little bit back to determine where I am in this market. Momentum MB, a second one I would say. And then this is actually forming a third, but it's also distributing. I'll probably say it's MMB3 or accumulating. Not 100% sure. It doesn't really matter, because overall we clearly have a bullish bias in this. So we'd be waiting for that to showcase itself on a lower time frame. So if I go to a daily time frame on this now, what we're going to see, is we're going to see a big sell-off through all the averages. So the idea now is we're building a stage one to start to move higher. So at the moment, it's not really an area where I want to be necessarily trading anything unless there's just pure proof of strength, right? So this is actually kind of strong. On this time frame, we're actually breaking out of this, but on the weekly, you can see we're kind of building this little area here, and really, I wouldn't consider, you know, I'd kind of draw this line in and wait for price to get above there through a candle. So we'll wait for that. And there we are. So at this point right here, I do think that, you know, this is kind of putting in accumulation. So there's potential upside on this based on how this delivers. It's coming out of some stage one inside of here, which is a good start, coming up over the 1020. And on the daily, at the same time, right, you can see it started to come out of here, which is that initial strength we saw. So this would be the accumulation out of this lower time frame, and we recently paused by a little bit. There wasn't really a clear area here for me to enter, so I don't think I would have taken anything, but it's important to note that we came out very nicely and we started moving higher, and most recently the last few days have moved higher, and we'll look at US 100. So during that same time, US 100 has actually also moved higher. So this makes a lot of sense. It's not showing necessarily any insane strength. So to me, when I see that, it's not showing me like I need to be trading this other XMTR pair. All I know is this is very bullish. XMTR, the other pair we're looking at, is somewhat bullish, has been weak before, but now we're in a bullish bias. So right now, you know, any pause would specifically mean that there might actually be a decent trade to take. So right now I don't really see anything. I do think we can label this as a momentum MB. So what I'm doing when I'm labeling all this is I'm simply looking at where we are in this cycle right here, right? So all I'm doing is I'm waiting for that accumulation to start a move. That accumulation is going to start a move through the 5, 10, and 20 EMA. This is all taught in the private mentorship. This moves higher, creates an MMB that pauses on the 5, 10, or 20. So again, the 10, 20 are being bought up by big money. And generally what you get is a cycle like this. This is what markets on average tend to do. They start making moves, maybe they distribute to reaccumulate, and then they start doing the same thing on the rising 5, 10, and 20. Those are what the best moves do, and that's where I want to get myself positioned. So that's exactly what I'm looking for here. We're starting to respect the 5, 10, and 20. We're looking for strong markets, and we're looking for pauses that prove that potentially money wants to come in. So this kind of just slowly moves higher. You know, it moves a lot higher, then it pauses again. We can take a look at what US 100 is doing at this time. Okay, so this is actually very, very powerful. So as US 100 now, that's this, right, came up with the market. As this is now pausing on the kind of rising, sideways moving 10 and 20, this actually looks like it's going to fall down, but at the moment it's okay. As that is happening, XMTR, which is the thing that we're trading, that we found through the mentfx screener right here, is actually pausing very high up on these averages. So this is a ton of strength. So what it's doing right now is it's actually creating momentum MB2. And for me, this is actually setting up for a potential move. So I want to keep an eye on a lower time frame. This would be a 65-minute now for an actual opportunity. And we can see we just flushed down into the 10 and 20, which is perfect. So right now what I'm looking for is a move higher, a pause, and a continuation upwards. So it kind of just moves up, not much to do. I'm going to go back to the daily here. Very hard to trade this. Don't see much that I can do here. It actually repauses. It actually comes back down. So this is still, you know, this is a big sell-off, but the question here is what is happening on the main indice. So the main indice is actually selling off very heavily beyond and below all these averages. So what the main indice has actually done is it just moved into what I would call a distribution. Now, as this happens, it's very important to remember that we are still in accumulating weekly, right? So the weekly is still in kind of accumulation or sideways, which is important because that means that we're still somewhat bullish, which means that opportunities on strong markets are going to be very, very good. So as we're moving into distribution on this indice, the overall market, the market that we're looking at actually, is just on a rising 20. So this is a lot of strength, which means that if this can start to show some kind of strength the next day, which simply means that we start to build some kind of demand, maybe something like this, that could be a phenomenal entry, because what we're doing then is we're building this kind of opportunity where we're flushing right now on a lower time frame, and we might be building accumulation opportunities to get behind this market actually. Okay, so that's what we're going to keep an eye out for. Okay, so it kind of moves higher. Wow, it pauses almost perfectly. I would say, you know, this is a perfect entry right here. I don't see anything wrong with it. I'm more than happy to take this. I throw the stop. You can see down here it says 0.41, so I'd use around that, just under 0.41, so maybe 0.33 is fine. And I'd look for an entry. Now again, I'm very sick, but again, following rules is second nature to me now. So we are actually in this trade now, and if it wants to lose, then it'll just lose. If it wants to go, then maybe it'll go. You can see this actually just comes straight down and stops us out. So we're gonna add one of these down here. -1, let's make this a little bit bigger so everyone can see it. There we are. And that's just an easy -1 that we start with, which is perfectly fine. And as we do that, we're actually continuing to build another one. So there might be another opportunity here in a second. And as this is happening, we want to keep in mind what's happening on US 100. So US 100 is starting to see a little bit of strength. And as it sees strength, we're seeing XMTR showcase that strength as well. So this is actually really, really nice for an entry. I would not mind re-entering this through the top. Something like this, see if we get tapped in. Yeah, so it just comes down as well. I don't really see a nice opportunity here anymore. I'll give it a second to set something up. Yeah, so it just kind of falls off. Let's take a look at the daily now, see where we are. So you can see it began to look really, really good, but now the daily, what's happening is it's also losing its rising 10 and 20, which is not a good sign. So right now what I think is happening is we're actually moving into distribution, again, for the purpose of becoming accumulation, but this makes it really hard to trade. So I would not touch this anymore, and we can look at NAS 100 now as well. And you can see this is actually also falling off. So right now we're moving into distribution, and I'm gonna suppose, once again, that this is all for the purpose of setting up some long market, but at the moment, right, it's not showing us that, and nothing is showing us strength. Well, at least this specific asset is not showing us strength. Other assets might, and those might be opportunities at the time, but I can't take it now. There's nothing for me to do. So it comes down, this is just all distribution, and all of a sudden, it moves from the stage 1 into this beautiful beginning of a stage 2. This is what I would label an accumulation, which means that it's very likely that if I go to weekly right now, this is selling off until a rising 5, 10, and 20. Let me show you guys. Here we are. Beautiful. So you can see this weekly starts a little move. It pauses right on the rising 5 and 10 and 20, which means we can label this thing right here as the MMB2 of a white or the higher time frame. So right now we are moving into what seems to be a very bullish market, and the question now is, how is this strength comparable to the overall market? So right now we had a few days of down, then we had 2 days of up. Let's take a look at US 100. Okay, so this had days down and then it had multiple days up, but during these days up, XMTR, or the other asset we're looking at, wasn't able to show as much strength. So that's a sign of weakness. Now, because of that, I want to be a little bit careful about trading that particular pair because, well, if this is showing strength, but XMTR can't follow with that strength, that's a big problem, right? And this came down to, you can see kind of the rising 50 under the 20, while US 100, what did the US 100 do? So the US 100 actually came down way under the 1020. So the fact that this sold off so heavily, and while that sold off super heavily, this could barely sell off, that's actually a really, really good sign. So that could lead to an opportunity in the coming few days. Let's see if it can do something like that. So price begins to pause here. Let's take a look at US 100. It also pauses here. So right now what's happening is we're building, very likely, an MMB1 to continue a move higher. Right, so everything is moving the way we kind of expected. We have a higher time frame accumulation, which is happening. We know that's going to lead to likely reaccumulation here, which is exactly what it's doing. So now the goal is to kind of follow this higher, which means if the overall market's going to go higher and something else is showing a little bit of strength, which it has kind of here, and as it's come higher, this should result in some opportunity. So we'll keep an eye on a lower time frame now for an opportunity. So price starts a little move. It flushes down to the 20. Which means now if we can pause, there may be an opportunity here. I don't really see one. It kind of just goes higher. It's really nothing I can do here, so I would just wait a little bit. Perfect. So price begins to pause like we expected, and it's doing so on the rising averages now. This is actually momentum MB1 now. And as that's happening, so it's had 2 days of down. As that's happening, this thing, pauses for a bit, moves higher, and then pauses. So this is in full bullishness, which is great, but this isn't necessarily following. Well, actually, it had this up day, it paused a little bit. So everything right now is actually kind of aligned. And the fact that we had a little bit of strength prior is a good thing. So this could lead to an entry. And remember, we're about a loss insofar, just following the rules that this thing is presenting us, right? So at the moment, all I see is maybe a buildup of some kind of accumulation here. Let's just see if that happens. So it actually fails down. And as it fails down, as it fails down, US 100 actually just goes sideways. So when this goes sideways, but this is failing down, that's a huge sign of, you guessed it, weakness, right? Which means even if a setup happens here, I probably don't want to take it because it's showing a ton of weakness, right? So you can see here a setup begins to form, right? So this is actually a valid buy in some scenarios. But the question is, how does that now compare to other markets, right? So as that is creating a setup, this thing barely flushed, this thing went higher, flushed down under the 10 and 20, and is now moving higher. And as that happened, right, this thing could barely set up. I mean, this thing just looks weaker. So this is weakness. So I would not trade this, even though it might work, right? So for instance, there's going to be an entry here in a second. There you go. For a lot of people, this is an entry already, where they just buy through this high. That's their buy. Maybe their stop was here. They're already stopped out, or their stop is here, and they might get stopped out. For me, I ignore this completely because there's already a fundamental reason of weakness behind this. So I just expect this to chop, right? When I see the market the way that we just looked at it, I see that this is likely to chop around, which means that if I get involved anywhere in here, I'm likely going to take losses. So this is how I avoid taking trades in areas where, even though the setup might be good, I don't want to take it. And there you go. There's your chop as we expected, right? So we can get rid of this, right? We can actually write this in so we can remember where it happened. This was weakness. This was some strength, right? But this was just clear weakness on behalf of the market. Now we flush out again. We start making a little move. So the question now is, what is US 100 doing? So US 100 moves a lot higher than it flushes out deeply. It's at its lows. And as that happens, this thing doesn't really flush out too deep, but it is showing overall weakness. So there's a little bit of strength here. And now it might start building a move. Let's see what this does. So there's a potential reason to buy around here. Let's just see if we can compare it to what's going on in the other market. So on this market, you're not getting much of a movement yet, as you can see. It's just kind of stuck in that same area. And this is kind of starting to put in some strength. So the question now is, what is our daily actually doing, right? So the daily started that accumulation. It came down and paused right inside of that rising 20. So this is actually one of those areas where, this will be the only trade where you take a -1 and then you're just wrong and there's nothing to do, or it's a winner, right? This is a great way to think because, you know, if this is a winner, it's going to start a move, right? And then I'm going to be behind that move. If it's a loser, it'll lose, but then there won't be an entry to take. Then it might become useless again. So this is an area where I'd actually consider taking a long, because everything right now is aligning for a very, very nice potential long. And I'll show you what I see that, where I see that. I see this as 1, 2, or as, you can do it like this. Again, there's multiple alignments here. So there's like 1, 2, there's 1, 2, there's 1, 2, and there's 1, 2. You know, there's multiple MBs here that can act as an entry. And this actually falls right into the most recent private mentorship material, which is just understanding that entries are not as simple as they always appear to be when we just look at an image. Instead, they act as a multi-demand setup, right? So that's exactly what's happening here. So this is where I'd be willing to throw a buy stop just over this high and over this pause right here with a stop, protecting it, and we'll look to see if we can get tapped in on that. So as it comes down, US 100 is actually, you know, slowly coming down and starting to come up. So this is showing a little bit of weakness again, right? So again, we're just walking ourselves through the steps here. But now you can see this got choppy and there's really nothing for me to take here. So now the question is, does it want to start a move again and then pause to go? Or is it just going to fail down? This is where I would ignore price again. So let's just see. Okay, so it fails down. So there's not much to do. And then it starts a move, right? So what it's doing now is you have a stage 2, you kind of get this long-term stage 1, and then this move higher right here, as that literally just completed, would be your initial accumulation MB. So now the question again is, how does this compare to either other markets in this area or to just the overall market? So you can see this thing, we're completely correct about, right? And I actually took trades during this time, not on XMTR, but on many other things that were showing a ton of strength. But this thing is just in pure delivery mode, right? This is in pure bullish delivery mode, rising on the rising averages. Now it's at new highs, higher than the averages, while XMTR was under the average. So this is a lot of weakness right now, right? This is showing a lot of weakness, which means that even though the market might be tradable, even though there might be good patterns, it's just simply a market that I would stay away from. Notice, you know, I still took a loss on it, and I took a loss on it when I thought that it showed a little bit of strength. I think I took it somewhere up here, and then that failed down, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with taking losses. It's actually very, very powerful, right? Remember, even as I showed you this, all of this money that was made here is made up of taking losses. It's made up of taking break-even losses and everything alongside that. And of course, you know, based on a risk of like even 1%, you can see what that might look like for you. Here we are. What that might look like for you through compounding, even with a loss rate as high as the one I have, right? My win rate's 30%. That means I only win 1 in 3 trades that I take. And yet, take a look at what you could have done for yourself during this year, about 400% in compounded return by taking losses, right? So this is why we take losses, but we also learn to stay out of taking trades and be patient when there is clear weakness. And again, this is only an example of one market. Remember, during this time, what's going to be happening is there's going to be a number of markets populating here based on the filters that you set for yourself. That's why this is available to the mentfx team. And what you would do is you'd be looking at all of them and you'd be deciding which ones are showing strength. And a lot of them would be actually making beautiful, beautiful moves. But what I did for you guys today is I chose a random one to show you the kind of patience that's associated with looking at a market and potentially trading it. So all we're going to do here is just wait, because all we can do is wait for like another setup. So price begins to pause. You can see it makes a nice move. It pauses a little bit. So the question now is, again, how does that compare? So as US 100 kind of moves higher and actually pauses in a much bigger way and can't move higher, that other market is actually now moving a lot higher. So this is actually showing, at this point, a ton of strength. So this is now starting to show strength, which is good, because that means that if this is now showing strength, when the overall market has money injected into it and starts moving higher, it's very likely that that market will now move higher too. So this looks like it wants to keep going. There's no reason it doesn't, right? It's in its higher time frame delivery here, and it should just keep going through new highs, which is great. But as we look, here we are. But as we look at this, we're starting to build like a little move here to go higher. And we can look at the 65-minute too. You can see here it's moving through flushes and starting up to be accumulate. And XMTR during this time is just flushing out barely. So this is actually now showing a little bit of strength, actually a lot of strength. This is what I would label, excuse me guys, like I said, I'm very sick. But this is what I would label MMB1. There we are. Yep, beautiful pause. So this is where I'm expecting this now become bullish, right? Most recently we had a down day. Let's take a look at the NASDAQ. Has a down day, but a very, very big one. So you can see this plays down through the 10 and 20, takes out a low, and actually wicks under the 20. And while that happens, the XMTR can't even get below like prior lows, very small down candle. So this is showing a ton of strength right now, which is great because that means this could lead to a really nice entry. Let's see if it does. So this is one of those examples where this is, preference, but this is an MB1 and this could be already a buy stop. Now what you could do is you could also wait for price to make a little bit of a bigger up move, maybe above these averages, pause here and then go. This is perfectly valid too, but I love the way this looks right now. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna compare this really quickly, take a look at what's going on the other market. Yeah, so there we go, right? As this market shows clear weakness, right? It's actually getting sold off even though it's in a bullish market. This one is showing pure strength. So this is where I'd be happy to set up a buy through this high, throw my stop under the low, and look to take it. So far, so good. And it just kind of breaks down, so there's nothing to do here. I would just cancel this trade, and I would go back to waiting for an accumulation to come in. So price moves much higher, and it's still in a very clear move here. And I'd take a look at US 100 really quickly. So US 100 is showing a little bit of strength, hasn't moved through the high yet, okay? So that's all good. This is not moved through the high yet, showing a little bit of weakness too, but is on the 20 and never got below it, which is a good thing to remember. And on the 65 minute here, right, we just had a big up move while the US 100 is starting to have a down move. So this is actually leading to what I would say would be actually a pretty good trade. I think this looks like a great trade to take a buy stop through this high to protect just under the ATR. So again, I'm looking at this ATR here, 0.34, just doing something like this, see if we get tapped in. So breaks down, and then as it breaks down, so there's actually a number of things going on here, right? You have MB1, MB2, so this is still a valid trade here. What you also have is this MB1, and there might be an MB2 that gets built here, right? So what I'm gonna do, because of that, 0.33. So what I'm gonna do because of that is I'm going to take a half size position on this trade here because I'm a little bit unsure, because what I think can happen is this can tap me in, come down, and then create a really nice trade here. So I'm gonna take a half position on this and a half one here if that happens, okay? Okay, so we get tapped in. So we're tapped in now, and we do get that pause. So I'll take another half position through this high right here. So I'll show you guys what that looks. Okay, so it actually tapped me in. So what we have now is we have two active positions. But they both make up a total of one position, right? And the way that would work is simply the entry price, because both of them get entered, right? So if you think about, I'm going to show you guys this with a Fibonacci tool. Now again, I do not use the Fib tool for anything other than averaging, and I'll show you what I mean by that in a second. We're going to make this 0.5, make it black. I just want that middle line. That's all I care about, this middle line, okay? And all we're going to do is we're going to go inside of this action, and we're going to look at the two entry prices, right? So we have entry price that was here, and we have an entry price that was here. So all this means now, right? And then we're going to look at the stop sizes too, because we had one stop here and one stop here, okay? So all this means now is simply we have one full position at an entry price here, right? At that entry price with a stop loss right here. Right, that's all it means. This is how the averages of prices because of entries work, right? So now what we have is we have one full position that looks like this. And the question now is, am I valid to move myself to break even yet or not? So this is what I teach in the private mentorship as the E micro, but this is where I step down to a 2-minute, and I actually use the 2-minute to decide if I'm gonna manage a partial yet. So looking at this, I don't see a partial yet. What I'd want to see is probably some strength through this, and then I can move to break even. Let's see if we get that. So price kind of moves higher, pauses, not much to do. Looks like it's going to take me out for a stop, for a -1, and looks like it just taps me out right there. Let me show you guys this. There we are, for a -1 right there. So what this means is that we're 2 -1s deep. I was very happy with the trade though. I don't think I did anything wrong there. I think the trade was absolutely beautiful. And we just get back to square one. There's nothing wrong with what just happened, right? As we look at the daily here, it's still showing pure strength. It's pausing on the rising 10. So it has a little bit of weakness. This is now, this never showed the strength, but it's also pausing on the rising 10, so that's fine. See if we get another little pause here. We do on the rising 20. So I think this is still valid to look for a potential entry here, just inside of there. So I'll keep an eye on it. Here we are. See if we get a little pause. Okay, so I was about to say there's a very high likelihood that what we could have done is taken this trade right here, right on this day. This was a great trade, a buy stop right there through this point, and that would be an entry. It'd look a little bit something like this. And just this next day would put us up over 9RR. And this is important because, again, even though we didn't take it and we're not going to record it as part of our data, this is very important to note because, just this alone, if it's a 9R gainer or more, you can see very quickly why proper management leads to small losses, break evens over time, and just one winner can become worth close to everything for you, right? So just keep that in mind. Even though I missed this trade, that's perfectly fine. And we'll go back to just watching this. So again, this does end up taking off through this high. Looks like we are completely correct about this MMB. US 100 is probably moving higher as well. No. So this is actually pure strength now. So this is what I would call, strength, right? So again, this is how I start labeling my markets. So I understand what is showing a ton of strength, a ton of weakness, whatever it might be, right? I'm walking myself through the story of this action so I can become a part of the story and hopefully get a piece of the move in the scenario that it sets up, right? So now it's pausing again. This is probably an MMB1 or 2. And as that happens, so again, a tiny sell-off, this is selling off to under the 10 and 20. So this is actually flushing out. So again, I still suppose this is all for the purpose of starting a move higher. I think I remember analyzing this with my team multiple times, so I already know what's kind of going to happen. But again, I'm walking you through the steps that actually allowed me to decide what's going to happen rather than just memorizing the action. So everything is good here. And yeah, I mean, if this wants to make a setup, I think it could still be very much valid for an entry. So if this can flush just down to the 20, which it does, this doesn't really give me an entry. This is still pure strength. Like I'll show you this comparatively probably. Okay, so it starts moving higher with the overall market. Good to see that, but there's nothing I can do here. This is just pure delivery at this point, right? Yeah, you can see this is just pure delivery. I can't do anything other than let this thing go without me. Pausing again, and this time you can see it actually does get to the 20. That's one of my rules. I like to see price flush at least to the 20 EMA because that's just what I look for. It's what I've taught myself to look for. So I can now compare it to this market here. And yeah, now you can see this is pure strength, right? We have this big flush that's now starting to build some demand. And while that's all happening, this thing is barely going lower. So again, notice the story being told, right? Some strength, money starts kind of coming in, weakness, 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 strength, strength, and all of a sudden, this thing is showing pure strength. So if we can get behind this thing, we're probably going to do very well for ourselves if we can get another move out of it, right? And now it's, it falls off, which is fine. We wait for a little setup. So this is what I expect. Sometimes, the flush will come to here and then start a move. Sometimes it'll get a flush and then it'll set up a move here, which is perfection. I will keep an eye on the daily. Yeah, so this is telling a great story behind what we'd want to see, right? This is pausing just on the rising 10 as we'd want to see that happen. This is probably an MMB3, so we have more than enough space to keep moving to new highs. Yeah, this looks phenomenal. And at the same time, let's take a look at US 100. US 100 is literally falling off the face of the earth, while this thing is barely going lower. That's strength. This is perfection. I'm more than happy to enter MB1, MB2. More than happy to take this long right here. Through that high. Throw the stop. Take a look at the 2 minute. So again, this is where I use the E micro just to orient myself. Something like this is probably fine. Like that. 0.62, looks good. See if we get tapped in. Okay, little pause, but that's all anticipated. There you are. This can easily set up for a move. Moves a little bit higher. So now there's a few important things here. So this is creating that double MB. Let's take a look at US 100 here. This thing is starting to show some strength, which is good because that means that, you know, we might be behind the overall market as this begins to show more strength. And here what we have is we have another mini flush. It starts creating kind of this move here for an MB setup, or specifically maybe even like this. So this is actually setting up for a nice move, maybe through this high. I'll actually just keep it there. I think it looks fine the way it does right now. Okay, perfect. So what you have here is you actually have an MB1, MB2. So I think this is actually setting up for a great trade right here as well. Let's take a look at the 2 minute. Yeah, I think this looks great. So I'll actually take a buy stop through this high too, like this. Okay. So we'll see which one gets tapped in first. This is not half positions. I think this is a very valid trade on its own. So if it gets taps in, then we're in and we're good to go. So it fails down, so we'll cancel that. This is still very much valid, but it's building up a very long-term range. So we'll probably cancel these and just keep an eye on this and see what it does from here on out. Let's look at the daily. Still looks really good. I think this is one of those moments where, again, it has its last chance now to start a move or to fail down and do nothing. Right, so again, this is one of those nice moments where, like, if I take an entry, I'm taking one loss and that's it, which is a very powerful thing you can do for yourself. Wow. This is perfection, right? So we have an MB1, and now it's starting to build this MB2. More than happy to take a long through this as that sets up. Throw the stop under here. See if we get tapped in. Okay, beautiful. So it holds the low, but then on this next day, it opens here, which means I would not be in this no matter what. So with, you know, so I just simply would cancel the trade because I'm not entering up here, and I'm not entering as it sells down, because again, if I'm entering into selling, then I'm entering into supply instead of into new demand. So this is where I simply wait, because now I'm assuming a move is going to build itself. And you can see what we get is we get MB1, MB2, this starts a move, but I don't have a way to get behind this. We can compare this now and see if there's strength. So again, this sells off. And as it starts going higher, this thing is showing the willingness to already go higher, so that's strength again. But I don't really have an entry here. I can't really get behind this. We get another pause, and then it keeps going. You know, I just can't get behind this. It just won't give me an opportunity. But then we get this little pause here. And that's really good, because now what we have is we have kind of this MB1, MB2. We have MB1, MB2. So we're getting a nice little setup here. Within a strengthy based market, you can see this can't go higher. It's actually selling off to below the 10 and 20. And while that's happening, this thing is at the rising 10. So this is a lot of strength, right? Again, it's all happening under this high, which for me is known as the cloud of liquidity, right? So this is where price moves higher, it comes down, starts making those setups, and it really wants to take out this high and then beyond. So I think this is actually a very valid trade because of where it's happening and how it's happening. So I'm willing to take an opportunity through this high, throw the stop down and under, and see if we get tapped in. Okay, so price taps us in. I'm gonna be honest with you guys about this. Yeah, I'd probably have my stop there. That looks good. And I don't think I'd be at break even just yet. Actually, moves higher, kind of pauses, barely takes that high. I probably would give it another chance to move higher. So I would not be at break even yet, which means simply if this comes down here, I will be taking a loss. If it starts making a move beyond this high, I'll be moving my stop to break even. So I'm going to show you guys what this will look like. Stop loss is at this point, and we just wait. So there's nothing to do here. It kind of comes down, comes up. I can't really do much here. I just have to wait. Let's take a look at the 2 minute to be fair about this. So again, you can see no pure proof that price is coming in through this yet, which means that it very well likely could sell off and then start a move, right? So I'm going to wait again. This is one of those areas where I'd still wait. Okay, cool. So this is good enough for me. This is kind of pure strength. So what I would do now is I'd take my stop loss, I'd move it to break even, which means now I cannot lose money, which is very, very cool. And at this point, we want to see this hopefully deliver. So US 100, as this is all happening, oh my gosh, you know, is falling off again. And as that's happening, XMTR is going higher. So this is still showing strength. So now we're positioned in a bullish market, a bullishly delivering market within bullish delivering demand. with an overall strength when the overall market's showing weakness. So that's very powerful. If this can start a move, then we're probably going to get a nice move out of this. That's how edge works. Nothing from that. Yeah, nothing really here. So now we're just playing our management game. I'm waiting for this to be up at least like 2, 3, 4 RR. Looks like it stops me out here. I break even. Yep. And just like that, we get stopped at break even, and there's nothing much to do there, right? Let's go back to the daily, take a look at what's happening here. So you can see we get that move to come in. We're now pausing again, which is great because this could lead to another opportunity. And as that's happening, US 100 is starting to make a little move higher. What we can do is we can also start labeling this a little bit, right? This kind of broke down here, rebroke up here. So we're kind of in a little accumulation here. This broke down again, then broke up again. So again, we're moving between accumulations here, and now it's moving into what we would call an MMB1. So this is all still oriented for delivery, right? So again, we got delivery right. We understand that we're still in a bullish market. Everything is lining up for bullishness. We have higher time frames aligning for continuations bullish. So there's no reason to think anything other than that. And we are still seeing some wicked strength on this thing. So again, I'm labeling that, I'm remembering that, and you can see kind of how the weakness transitioned into strength, and that strength is now holding itself up, but that doesn't mean that I'm necessarily behind the move just yet. And now we're selling off again, which should be a mini flush to the 20, hopefully, at minimum. There we go. And this flush now, okay, should lead to new accumulation entries that we can get behind. Now notice how being in this trade or this trade, right, isn't that important, because again, what I'm doing is I'm picking points where once I get in, I can get out for a break even, hopefully, right? For managed break evens at the potential of delivery, right? If this delivered then, I would have made a lot of money off that and I could have done really well. But when it fails, I'm not sitting there being upset over the analysis, over the fact that stuff failed. I'm simply allowing the market to tell a story of when and where I'll be able to get involved. And if it gives me that, then I'll get behind that move. So then you get this nice setup here. I don't really see a nice enough area to buy yet, but what we can do is we can compare this to US 100. So US 100 sells off heavily, actually, so there's still strength in there. Starts a little move higher, you know, the next high is potentially here. So everything looks good. I think these are aligned quite well. You have a high here. So this thing wants to go up. Like clearly to me, this wants to go up. So if I can get a nice little pause on this action here like this, then I'm more than happy to take an entry on. Let's take a look at the 2 minute. Yeah, I think this looks phenomenal. So what I'd do is I'd have my buy stop set up here. I'd have my stop under, see if we get tapped in. This is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with this action. 0.46. Let's take a look at the 65 minute. Beautiful. And we just get tapped in. So this would tap me in on this move right there. I'll show you guys the 2 minute. Sorry. There we go. Yep. So it taps us in. Now we're in this move. Now it's just a question of waiting for like a break even on this thing. So there we go. That should be enough for a break even rule. Let's take a look at this. Yeah, I mean, this looks phenomenal. So this is where I take my stop and I move it to break even. Again, all the risk is off the table now. This is now simply a question of, will this thing come back or will it start some kind of move that I can manage? That's it. Now we're in it. We're up around 2 RR or so. Nothing really to do except wait. Looks like it's about to pause and take us out, but that's perfectly fine. We'll let this thing determine what it wants to do, and it takes us out for another break even. Now, as you're watching this, I hope you're starting to understand that most of trading is actually very boring, and most of it is actually sidelining patience, waiting for the opportunity to actually take something, right? Because that's the only way that we actually make money. So this thing ended up going through that high, continued to deliver. This is in full pure bullishness. I think that, you know, because it's MMB1, we still have the opportunity to pause for MMB2, MMB3. So like we are in a very bullish market, which means if we can see stuff continue to show up with strength here, we're going to get a phenomenal entry on this thing because, well, there's already clear strength behind this. So we'll see if we get that. Breaks higher, pauses. Doesn't really pause enough for me, so I'll wait. Looks like it's just going to go without me. That's how the game sometimes works. However, it does pause a little bit up here, so the question now is, do I want to buy stop here? The answer is probably yes, but this is where I would do a little bit of comparing. So this is starting a bullish move. XMTR, you know, this is lagging a little bit behind it. Like really, I shouldn't take it, right? Because this is showing a little bit of weakness, okay? However, it was showing a lot of prior strength, right? That's very important to remember. So this is, you know, through all these highs now, and XMTR can't do that, right? It hasn't taken out all those highs yet, but it has shown some strength, and take a look at the daily, it's showing a lot of strength here, okay? So that's a good thing. So this is one of those areas where if I get in here and it works, then it's gonna work really well. If it fails, it's gonna fail once, and then I'm not gonna really follow this again, which means it's worth the risk to take a loss with the potential of what the reward brings. So I would actually take a long here through this high with a stop 0.54, so just under. See if we get tapped in. So price actually does tap us in and then instantly takes us out. A great example of what happens when, well, you follow your rules. You will take losses. So now I would simply ignore this move. Even though it might work here, I would ignore it until later and see if it sets up something in the future. So it actually does, right? It actually comes back down, comes up and sets up this high for a potential long. So now what I do is I compare it again and see where are we. So this thing actually comes down and also sets up a move right now. So this is actually another one of those areas where I do think it's valid to potentially look to trade it, right? So what we get is we get this move down, this move up, this move down. Now looking at this, I actually see this is just very, very, this is getting very wicky. This is a lot of back and forth. So what's actually gonna happen here is I'm just not gonna trade it. That's it, I just have to wait. You can see it moves higher, that's okay. Moves higher and then pauses. That's actually really good. This is a much better setup here than it was here. So now what we get is we get this move that now pauses. So I think we're still in MMB3. I think this is all still part of the same move, but now we're finally getting a clean pause on the rising averages. So that should set up a flush that brings us an entry. Let's see if that can happen. I don't really see anything here. Yep. So this is just wiki. It's just wiki and hard action to trade. It does move higher, but it's very, very hard action to trade, and it's relatively wiki. And wow, that's actually the full price and most recent price brought to its end. So you guys might be surprised because this is going to be one of those videos. Let's actually label this. This is going to be one of those videos where you literally just watched, how long? You literally just watched 46, 47 minutes of analysis walkthrough of a market that I might have traded for over 106 days, so a third of a year, where the actual result of it was 3 losses, 2 break-evens, right? Nothing else, no wins. And this is important because even on markets that do work, even on markets that do deliver, that I get right, that I'm correct about throughout the entire move, especially on an overall market that I've been correct about on the whole move, it can still result, as you can see here, in average losses and average break-evens. And that's because your trading journey and your trading profitability is not made up of guaranteed profits. It's only made up of guaranteed profits over time, right? So what's going to happen is you will take your losses and break-evens on stuff that does deliver. But simultaneously, and one of the reasons that I'm so profitable and can sit here and be confident in everything that I do, including make a video about me just taking losses and break-evens for all of you, is because I'm not looking at one market. I'm not staring at one market hoping and over 100 days being upset over the fact that I took losses and break-evens. I know this is normal, right? What's happening is I'm looking at a number of markets. I'm looking at this strength across a number of markets. And what I'm then doing is I'm looking to trade into it. I'm looking to trade into it. And what happens is through those same trades, because when you look at this, you should see virtually no difference between this setup and the ones we just took or looked at on some of these trades, right? The only difference is this showed so much more strength, and I traded that strength, and then I managed in that strength, that only one win with a partial and another partial accounted for about 14R, 13R in gain, right? And then you can see I actually took another loss here, right? I took a loss here, and now I was waiting, and then I did not take this entry here, but that's okay. I took a loss here too, right? So what we could do is we can go back to XMTR and really record the data over Tesla and XMTR, and all of a sudden, right, what you notice, here's the one win on Tesla and here's a loss on Tesla, right, is even with a win rate of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1 in 7, which is a win rate of, what does that make it? Yeah. So with a win rate of only 14%, I am wildly profitable, right? Over that same time, just across these two markets now, using the same analysis, the same ideas, the same tools, the same labels, the same management, this results in an overall -1, -2, -3, +10, +9, a +9 R gain across just those two markets. Then you can also add in the other markets I've traded. You can add in MSTR. Here's a market I traded for around 20 RR just in this move here. Then you can add in the other markets where I took a break even here, actually, nothing to do. QBTS, you can add in another market where same moves, but I took 5 R gain followed by about a 11 R gain, right? And then I took another break even. All of a sudden, and then another break even here. All of a sudden, all these moves add up to you simply executing the process, taking every single loss that you possibly need to take with no issue, with good management, with clean break evens, with no emotional gabbage, with no emotional cabbage or trash or you just have no emotional weaknesses associated with the things you're doing because you already know that over time it's going to lead to profitability, right? So this was with Tesla added, then you can add in MSTR with a break even and the win of the 20, and you can add in the loss from the break even from CLS, the loss on like IonQ, a gain on QBTS, which was I think +11 and +8, right? And all of a sudden you get the same kind of things you saw before. 1, 2, 3, 4 wins. Yeah, 4 wins within 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 out of 13 trades, which is what? About 30% win rate. But despite that, you're looking at a 20, 40, 53, 52, 51, 50, 49, 48. You're looking at like a 48 plus RR gain on the fact that you took a ton of losses and break evens. And again, this video was a little bit randomized as to the market I'd watch, but what I wanted to show you is how I would approach my own rules, my own process, my own comparison of strength, and most importantly, the usage of the cycle and the labels of the cycles to understand where I am in a market, to position myself in the market, to be patient on a market, and be okay with the outcomes, whether they're wins or losses. And I know this is very different from anything you've probably seen on YouTube because most stuff on YouTube is just wins, wins, wins. Here's some more wins, pay for my mentorship and let me give you signals versus what you just witnessed, which is here is how you execute with patience. Here is how you are okay with taking losses and break evens. And this is exactly how you build up an equity curve over time that's going to return EV to you profitably. Now, if you want to learn more, join up. I want to meet you. I want to talk to you. I want to literally watch you grow. And most importantly, I want to give you the tools you need to be able to go and find markets like this for yourself. This is only one of these markets. Now, if you look at a few others of these, like IonQ up here, the second one, this is actually a market I traded. Let me show you guys. This is a market I traded. I traded a few times, or at least I tried to. And the one time I did trade it, it looks like, yeah, this thing secured about 5, 6 RR for me, about 5 RR, 5.7, 5.8 RR. So again, I could take 6 break evens or I could take many break evens. I could take 6 straight losses. And this trade alone would pay for those 6 losses. And then another trade would make me even more, right? And this is another break even here. This is the beauty of trading. This is the beauty of management. You begin to allow yourself to take these break evens and these losses because you start learning and understanding how profitability is actually handled. Okay, and then you have a simple life of, well, following the rules because you know exactly what you expect out of a market, especially what a market needs to do. You understand how the labels of a market work. You understand how to be patient when other people are not patient and losing money, and as a result, you guarantee that you're going to do well for yourself over the long run. All right, guys. You just witnessed an hour of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6 trades. I think 5 trades, 3 of which were losses. You're welcome. But you've also witnessed, hopefully, how patience creates confidence, how the ability to label and understand where you are in a market creates confidence, how comparison between certain market groups creates confidence in understanding what you should be looking for next, of how you can execute based on that confidence, and how that continuous execution leads to, especially over multiple assets, because you're not a one asset one trick pony where you understand that you can trade multiple things, how that leads to overall profitability, and as a result, overall positive edge.